All right, I think I'm live. It usually takes a second for it to like do its thing here on TikTok, but so today, I mean, like among other things, we'll talk about other stuff too, but because I'm usually pretty open to discussion and answering questions for people if they want. I mean, like this is a good forum to do it. I'm gonna be pretty relaxed. I think I'm gonna be pretty mellow tonight. We'll see. I feel pretty good only because yesterday and the day before I did like a total dry fast. So for like 2 days, I didn't drink any water or eat anything, and I actually feel really a whole lot better. I guess there is something to be said for that, to the whole like don't drink water and don't eat any food for 2 days. I guess there's something to that, because so I do it and then I actually feel pretty good. You know, I'm actually really happy about it. So I'll probably do that again. Maybe next week or something, I'll do like another 2 days with no food, no water, and just, but anyway, so welcome to all people joining. So, I mean, I'm gonna open up by just talking about some of the trucking issues, because there's a few, this has been kind of a hot topic, at least in different parts, different little corners of the internet where you find me lurking, along with a bunch of other, those of us who are either in the trucking sector in some way or the other, or we're actually drivers. So for those of you who don't know, I actually am, I'm not a broker, I actually am a driver. I own my equipment, and I own it outright. I've owned it outright for many years. And, I've done long haul, I've done short stuff, I've done all different kinds of things, and I've hauled lots of different kinds of products in my tenure, in the years that I've been doing this. And I get these requests periodically, and I did a video on it a couple of days ago, where actually I think it was just yesterday, in fact, where somebody had asked me about going into the trucking sector, and I gave them my very honest opinion. And I think I'm going to go a little further into detail now that I have a little, because I'm not on the clock. I can kind of go into this a little bit with you guys. And they're in the trucking world, it's pretty well cooked. I don't know that it's gonna go. I don't know how much longer it can really go. Just looking at least not the way that we're thinking about it. So one of the things that is, I just saw it today. In fact, there was somebody who was in the trucking sector was pointing out like that all these illegals and all of the H-1Bs, like all these non-domiciled CDLs, etc. These guys are taking out all these loans for all this equipment, and they're not paying any of the loans back, and the banks keep giving them extension after extension after extension after extension. Now, they would never do, just so you understand the trucking sector, if you buy a truck on credit, first of all, if you can finance a truck on credit, a semi-truck on credit, you can buy a private jet, because they usually don't do them. And for good reason, because a lot of guys don't pay them back, or they get themselves caught in a situation where the maintenance basically eats them alive. So what happens with this is that they usually just say, hey, we'll give you like another week, and that's it. And then they're sending a guy out to repo that truck. They put trackers on them, and they actually send a guy out to repo that truck. They are not doing that with any of the illegals, and they're not doing that with any of the, that's solely for Americans. They're doing that. Everybody else is getting away with all of this. And the reason for that, there is no way to keep freight rates lower than what they are without having all of this. You could not take freight that cheap and have to pay 29 to 40% interest, effective interest rate. I'm not kidding, by the way. Those are like real interest rates. I've seen them. 18 is usually the minimum that I've seen. Again, unless you're like going through PACCAR credit or something like that, which, dude, none of these guys are doing that. None of these guys are doing stuff like that. No, they're getting this stuff through like these secondary, tertiary lenders, and they're getting these ridiculous rates, and nobody's repoing these trucks. Well, yeah, they can't, because if they do it, then freight rates go 4x overnight. They go just completely crazy, which they should, but they're not going to do it. The Orange Messiah cannot have that happen, because then you'd see what's called felt inflation. You'd see inflation everywhere. And right now they're talking about, we've got inflation under control. No, you really don't. You don't live in the real world. You're a detached orange boomer. You're not real. There's nothing about you that's real. You don't live in the real world. You live in boomerland. You live in fake billionaire boomerland. Well, yeah, I mean, and you're a bottom bitch for bankers, basically. So that's the reality. So in the trucking sector, you're having to compete against all of that. And that's the reality. And here's the other thing too. None of those guys are going to have to pay any of that back. They'll extend it out for years. They'll just keep going. Because do you really think that the banks want any of these white Volvos and Cascadias back? No, they don't. They're not worth anything. They're not. None of the resale on white Volvos and Cascadias is nothing. I don't think you can't give them away, especially ones that have had a hole cut in the floor so that guys can poop through it. Because that's the reality of what is going on out there in the world, in the trucking sector. Ask drivers who've been doing it for a little while. Thank you to JJ. Thank you. So as a result of that, you have to ask yourself: do you want to go in that industry? And will the industry come back? Zero Hedge was pretty optimistic about it. Their whole idea was that industry will come back in about 8-9 months or so. That's pretty optimistic. Demand overall is slowing, and there's nothing I'm seeing anywhere that says that because this really is, I hate to make this purely political, but it is political because it's a political problem. It isn't a business problem. It isn't a problem involving demand economy. It isn't anything to do with that. It's actually a political problem that exists, and it is a political problem involving immigration, which means it is actually an executive problem. This isn't Trump derangement syndrome. This is just me stating the fact. This is actually the one job that Tard has, that he has failed miserably at, which is getting these people out of the country. And he never will. I'll scroll down and see your comments here shortly. So just bear with me. I'm way behind. I've 65 comments. So if you're not hearing me address it, it's only because I'm just finishing I'm finishing this thought. Anyway, that's the problem with the industry, and I don't see it going away really at all because of all of those reasons. And if you did do that, let's say you did cut off all the visas. Let's say that you cut off all the visas. Let's say that you also deported all the illegals, which they're not going to do. There's too many illegals that are related to Border Patrol, frankly. There's too many illegals that are related to cops. There's too many, they're all third cousins. Dude, I live in Texas, dude. I see this stuff. So, that may not be the case in places like North Dakota, but that is definitely the case in California and Texas. And so, no, you're not going to ever see 40,000 deportations per day. You're never going to see a stadium of people being deported every single day. I would love to see it, but it's not going to happen. And so, as a result, no, all those blue collar jobs that they claim, truck driving being one of them, that Americans won't do, that Americans are desperate to try and go do. They would like to go do those jobs for some kind of money other than just $12 an hour or less, depending on the number of hours worked. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. So, that's the problem, is that there actually is, it isn't replacement theory. It's just replacement of labor, because that's what they need, is cheap labor. So, for those of you that are no, white replacement. No, that's not it. It's dude, it's just replacement of Americans. They can't have Americans because Americans are all uppity. They want things they want to be able to afford a house and afford a car. We can't have that. We can't have Americans doing that. You don't want people owning stuff. I just did a couple of videos on this where I just pointed this out. This is the cardinal sin. You don't want people owning things. If you're a banker, you want them to always owe. You want them to always be owing you something, right? We've all seen the John Goodman speech, right? I assume all of you out there have seen the John Goodman. It's not John Goodman. It's a character he's playing in a movie called The Gambler. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Go watch this movie. It's actually a very good movie. It touches on a lot of different ideas. It was based on a book, and I can't remember the name of the book, probably by the same name. But the character, the loan shark character played by John Goodman, we've all seen it. He nails it. As soon as you owe, forget it. You are now a slave. And that's the reality. So they don't want people owning stuff. They don't want Americans owning the country. If especially young Americans, if young Americans own their country, they'll start having kids and they'll start telling their kids, hey, you own this country. And to the banker's way of thinking is, no, you don't. You don't own this country. We own this. This is ours. We're taking this over. And that's the banker perspective. I'm going to adjust this just slightly, and hopefully I don't completely destroy everything. There we go. So there we go. Now let's hit the messages here and see how far I get buried on all of this. Like scroll. Let's see here. Does the state of the trucking industry at large have an effect on everyday prices? Yes, it does. It absolutely does. This is why you're able to get the prices. This is why you're able to still see prices not quite as high as they probably by rights should be. Because the wages for truck drivers should be going up. Now, they should be going for everybody else too, right? I mean, like, you understand. Wages in America have been flat for decades now. Like, none of this has gone up. You know, you've probably seen me break the math down. The math is very simple. Anybody can do it. I can teach a 9-year-old, if they can do basic math, how to figure this stuff out, to figure what your real inflation is. In 1971, your minimum wage was $1.60 an hour. To achieve the same spending power today, spending power, you have to have $185 an hour minimum wage. That is not a joke. It's that bad. That's how much inflation has actually taken place. Have any of your wages gone up to cover that? Let's just go back with something. Let's not even be abstract. Let's just do something that everybody watching this was probably alive for. You were probably around in 2020. There has been, since 2020 to today, right? Prices have gone up on everything almost 100%. Have your wages gone up 100%? For anybody? Have any of you gotten 100% raises doing the exact same job? Okay, not going to some other job, but doing the exact same job. Have you gotten 100% raise? The answer for the vast majority of people is no. They're going to be like, no, in fact, actually, I took a pay cut. Yeah, that's more reality. So to answer your question, so in the trucking sector, it has a knock-on effect that if rates go up 4 or 5 times, which is what they should be doing, it's not a joke either. I mean, because the job itself, you can't even maintain the equipment any longer. Like, for real, I don't think people really understand this, how much money is involved from the ownership perspective of a truck. If you own let's just say one piece of equipment, your tractor, well, 2 pieces, your tractor and a trailer, okay? The maintenance on that equipment, the rates that guys are getting now isn't even covering the maintenance on a lot of this stuff now, because maintenance has gotten expensive. All the parts have gotten expensive. Labor to maintain the equipment has gotten expensive. All of my oil changes on my truck, for instance, I change my own oil. My oil changes are like about $300. That's per oil change. That's every 12,000 miles. That's like a month. So per month, and that's just an oil change. That's to say nothing of tires. That's to say nothing of the guy who, like, you get a flat tire out on the road somewhere, and if you're lucky, maybe there's a tire place that's nearby, and it only costs you $800 to $1,000 for that one tire. If you're lucky. If you're way out in the middle of nowhere, what if you're out on some state highway or some U.S. highway? That one tire may cost you $1,600. That is not a joke, by the way. That's how bad this stuff is. And a lot of the loads, you don't even make that much money. Not even close. Like, you don't even make half of that in some cases. So these guys that are taking these loads at these really, really low rates, to go back to what I was talking about before, of course they can't. They're not paying these loans on the trucks. Of course they're not. They can't. They can't pay back the loans on any of these trucks because they don't make enough. They're bidding it so low they cannot afford to do it. And they'll also just change the DOT numbers. They'll change the license plates and number. And you also have the guys who will just do anything they want. Change DOT numbers, change license plates on them, do whatever they want to do. They'll change the VINs on the truck. They don't care. Like, what do they care about it? This isn't. They see this as just a contested economic zone formerly known as the United States. A country that used to have a culture and a people and, things like that, right? Stuff that like we all, Mom, Apple Pie, John Wayne, all that kind of stuff, right? They don't care about that stuff. They don't care about any of the politics behind it. They don't care, none of it. They just want to make some dollars because the dollars spend more in their country. That's all they care about. So they care nothing about the stuff that Americans care about. There is no values there because it's just like, for them, it's just, I want to make money and then I'm going to leave. That's it. So it doesn't make it. And of course, the worst that's going to happen to them is they'll be deported for doing all of this. They can do as much illegal stuff as they want on the road. Nothing's going to happen to them. The worst that'll happen is they'll get deported and they'll be right back in about, a month or two. I mean, under a different name, and it'll be under a different driver's license, and they'll be working for a so-called different company that is in the same apartment complex in California where these companies are all located. Does that make sense? So, and not to overtalk that, but I mean, like, that's just the reality of what's going on. And could they go after it? Yes, you could. How would you solve it? You would go after the shippers. That's where you would do it. You would just go after the shippers and the brokers, and you just say, listen, if your name's on the paperwork, you're the shipper or the broker on the load, and they're in your truck and they're this, we're just fining you $10 million. And it's collectible in 3 days. Otherwise, we shut your business down, take all your assets, and just talking to you, Amazon, because that's the reality. It would crush Amazon. It would crush all these it would crush Amazon, Walmart, all these different companies that use all this stuff. Like, that's who they would get. So in other words, the people who donate a huge amount of money to all the politicians, which is why it's not going to happen. Good evening from upstate South Carolina. It's weird to say upstate and then South Carolina, but good evening. What do you think of the future of fuel hauling? If you can get into it, I mean, if you can do it, it's usually, in my experience, usually you have to have, if you've got experience in tanker and you have your hazmat, then yeah, you might be able to do it. Again, if you can find somebody that'll take it. Again, it depends upon how much they're going to pay you as to whether or not it's worth doing. So OTR is cooked. Yep, I think OTR is pretty bad right now. Lots of trucking companies going out of business. There are. Local company just shut it down in 4 years. 40 years, yes. And it's all the domestic companies who go out of business. It's none of the illegals. None of them are going out of business. That should be your first clue that you're being replaced. Like, again, this isn't replacement theory. This is just objective. You can see it. If domestic companies that have been around for decades are the ones that are getting crushed, but all of the companies that are running illegally are doing just fine and they're still out there running amok, and especially in the wintertime when you'll find a whole bunch of these guys, thank you, you'll find a whole bunch of these guys causing wrecks all over I-80. There will be huge pileups everywhere. Well, yeah, that's what your first clue would be. You would just look at that and go, yeah, obviously they're not going to get rid of these guys. They're here to stay. They want the cheap labor. You can only look at the actions. I don't care what somebody's words say, dude. It's just like, it's the same thing with the Orange Messiah. He says a lot of stuff. Dude, watch the actions. That's all you can do. You just have to watch what somebody's doing. So, I stopped being over the road in 2015 and worked LTL ever since, making more money home. Yeah, I mean, again, if you can find, it's good work if you can find it, right? I mean, that's how it is with a lot of things. Where's tinfoil hat? Go eat. Go. I'm not. No. Eventually, I'd like to see an actual free speech platform exist where I could tell people what I really think of them. Yeah, I voted. Did you vote for Trump? Yeah, I voted for him twice, and for two different reasons. The first time was the first go around in 2016. I actually thought that there was going to be some kind of a change. I'm like, all right, I don't really believe in all this too much, but I'm willing to make this exception. Maybe this is real. Maybe this is something he's going to do. The second, after I realized, like, dude, this is all just a con. This is just another scam artist, just like everybody else. I voted for him again in 2020, and the reason I did that was because I was really hoping that the left, I was hoping that he would win so that the left would honor their pledge to burn the entire country down. So I was doing it for the reasons that you wouldn't expect. I was doing it because, I mean, I know I look all cute and cuddly here and all that kind of stuff, but dude, I'm actually an extraordinarily violent human being. Like, well, how come you never talk about it? Because I'm on camera. If you were standing here in front of me, we would be having a very different conversation about the reality. So, just the reality. I mean, that's just how it is, man. You see a Trump hack Peter Schiff for calling him out on inflation and line. I didn't actually, but that sounds like something Peter Schiff would do, and Schiff is probably right. Schiff, I may disagree with him on orange internet money versus gold, and we may have our differences there, but I mean, as far as inflation, no, Peter's correct. He's correct about that. What about deregulation? I don't know how much deregulation you need. I mean, you've already got guys that are, you already don't have a country, right? Countries have borders, and if you don't have any borders, you don't have any borders, and it's a free-for-all to whatever. I don't know how much more deregulation you really need at this point. You could have total deregulation if you wanted, but then you have to have at least your borders. Then you can have deregulation for your domestic population, and that'll help a lot. But then you also have to have hard currency too. See, right now, it's the bane of my existence trying to explain this stuff to people, which is why I've for the most part given up trying to explain it. I'll answer questions periodically, but I've given up trying to explain how this system works, because there are people who still labor into the delusion, like today, that we have this demand economy. Government demand is not a demand economy. Government demand, in other words, printing money to buy stuff from mega corporations so that their stock price goes up, that is not demand. There is no market involved in that. That's just government printing money and buying stuff from mega corporations so that they don't go bankrupt. Right? That's all that is. What does the market want? Because the market's the people, and I can assure you that left, right, or center, most of the people don't want what they're seeing right now. I would say that's probably true. I don't think most people want they don't want any of this. Like, it's just like, think about it, think of the future that we're all building together collectively. Does anybody want this future? Because it looks more dystopian every day I wake up. Am I the only one who sees this? Because every day I wake up, I see things just getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Like I pointed out, with that movie, Good Fortune, that was written and directed by Aziz Ansari, I at least give Aziz Ansari, some credit that you made a movie not set in some weird Marvel universe and not some alternate, version of Earth. You set it into like today's real world, and then you dealt with real world situations, and nobody will do that. I don't think there's a director out there that will touch that. Because all that would, if you made a movie set in today's world, it just looks like a dystopian nightmare. It's the truth, isn't it? If you were to think about it, what kind of movie would you put in today's world that didn't look like a nightmare? A rom-com? Could you imagine trying to do a rom-com in like today's world? It would look horrible. It would be everything wrong with the dating world right now. It would look like a disaster. How do you make fun of that? You could make fun of it for a while, but the problem is you run into the same problem that Aziz Ansari ran into, which is that a lot of that's not funny for people who have to live that every day. It's all fun and games to make fun of it, but dude, people have to live through this every day, and they don't get a break from it. They don't get to just go do something else. So. No, I don't. So no, deregulation, I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think deregulation is really the issue, at least not at this point, because you don't even have really any kind of sector left anymore. You have, it's worse than the Wild West. It's the Wild West, but the scales are tilted towards the enemy by your own people. Your own government is backing all of this. So, because they control the printing press, and if they control the printing press and you control people's minds, and they always have to use dollars to do everything, right? I mean, I tried to explain this to my commie followers. I'm convinced that my commie followers either cannot understand me, or like they're so sold out on the idea that no, we can do communism if we do it this way. Like, dude, no, you still have central banking, you still have the same problems that you have, and they're not going to go away. You're not dealing with the human condition. Only way out of that's hard money, and then you leave people alone. You stop telling them they have to build your perfect civilization. But I haven't run into a commie who thinks like that. Most of them say, no, who the hell is we? Stop with this we. So, you're talking about, Nintendo? I mean, like, yeah, sure. But I mean, if you're talking about no, why would anybody do that? No, it usually takes threats, coercion, or debt, which is usually what central banks are very good at doing because everything is based on debt. You would not want me for president. No. Yeah, you ain't ready for that. People would have to get a lot more. You'd have to have a lot more violent tendencies and be a lot more unstable to want that. Like a lot more. Like I said, I mean, I know I look all cute and cuddly and everything, but dude, no, I'm pretty capricious. And that has a tendency to lead to some really serious problems. Rampant bankruptcies and sorry, it must have cut off on you. Won't rampant bankruptcies and defaults cause a collapse? No. It depends on what you mean by collapse. To answer this question pretty directly, it depends on what you mean by collapse. If you're talking about like a reset of the markets, well, I mean, it'll destroy small business. Small businesses are cooked. There's no way out for them. But no, for the mega corporations, as long as people have to keep using dollars, as long as you have to go and get dollar brand dollar bills in order to buy stuff from the people who produce things, that'll stay going for a long time because there's nowhere for you to go. The Soviets had a place to escape. Dollars. They could use dollars and they could do a black market. You can't do a black market because what are you going to use? Gold, orange internet money? Okay, that's fine. I mean, you could do that, but then how many people understand that? And of course, they have to convert that back to dollars because it's not like they produce anything, right? How many people make stuff in this country? Seriously. Of the people that are watching right now, which there's 52 of you, how many of you take raw materials and make them into something at your job? I'm actually asking. Because overall, very few people in the US do that now. It's a service economy, right? It's just people moving money around. That's all it is. It's a scam economy. It's the yeah, I'll borrow some money, pay you later. That's all it is. So, but how many people take something raw materials and then make it into something real that people can purchase and that they would continue to buy? And then if you did that, if you converted it and said, hey, I no longer take dollar brand dollar bills, will you still buy this from me? Most people will go, I get paid dollars at my job, especially if they work for the government or anywhere. Like, I get paid dollars at my job, nobody else will pay me anything else, so it's like, there you go. And if people have to go and buy another currency first in order to transact, that's another layer, and then it adds another complication. You see what I'm saying? So it depends. To answer your question, will it cause a collapse? It could if it was actually being applied to everybody equally. But right now you have a top-down economy. Everything is top-down. That's why it's frustrating for me to try and point this stuff out, and then I get morons that say stupid shit like, you have Trump derangement syndrome. You mean like my dad, who actually on the phone told me that Trump is the Messiah? I'm not kidding about that. That's the word he used. Actually, he used the term second coming of Christ. That's not a joke. I wish I were joking about this. And that he is here to fulfill biblical prophecy so that way, him and this other country in the former Ottoman Empire, which I can't say apparently on TikTok because they'll just zap my account if I do, but we all know the country we're talking about, are supposed to bring about 1,000-year reign of the kingdom of heaven. That is, without me having to say it that way, like the way that he said it, but that's basically what he had said. I can't say it the way he said it because because of the algorithms. But yeah, that people believe that crap. That's pretty deranged, just so you know. That's pretty deranged. But no, I mean, when you're talking about this stuff and it's like everything is top down, if you make your entire economy top down, you make everything political. That's why everything sucks. That's why it's impossible to divorce the politics from it. It's because everything has become a top-down dystopian nightmare handed down from on high. You don't have, there's very little control for the people out here in the real world to say, oh yeah, I'm just going to do something and I'm not going to worry about the government. Well, you can try it until but it's like you may not believe in government, but the government believes in your money. That's how that's how it kind of works. Hold on here. Something did this thing again. Trucking industry economics comment on wages. Can you be specific as far as like comment on wages? Like, are you talking about like the freight rates, or are you talking about like an actual like the per mile rate for company drivers? Only way to succeed now is to yep, that's the system they created. I appreciate how open you are about violence. I'm trying to get people acting like, yeah, I mean, I don't think that there is any way to reform this. I'm tired of trying to get people to act like we can reform it. I said this up before. Hold on a second. I need to put this down. I said this before, that I think maybe like a couple of weeks ago, that you can't really vote your way out of this situation, but you can. You can and you can't. You're not going to be able to vote the way that they think you're going to have to vote, but you're going to have to. I mean, it's just how it is. If there was a better way that gets past human nature and greed, because your problem is always going to be the greediest people out there that will sell you out. That's always going to be the problem. And yeah, that's how it works. So if you're going to be sold out, you're going to be sold out by your own people because they were promised a slightly nicer lifestyle than what they had before. That's the truth. That's how all of that works. So, the Soviets had the same problem, right? The Soviet citizens, the Russians, they live in an apartment or something like that. And then somebody says, hey, that's a nicer apartment than what I have. And so then they just make up something about that person, and then they get hauled away to some gulag, and then that person gets their apartment. That's the unfortunate reality. It's why I use the example in an old video. Somebody actually, reposted it somewhere. I happened to see it on Birdsite, and it was a video where I was talking about Star Wars. And it's not because I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm a Gen Xer. And of course, Star Wars is like ubiquitous and everybody knows it, which is why I used it for an example. Imagine if, think about it like this. Let's just take a scene out of Star Wars just for fun. And there were so-called stormtroopers who you could see their faces, and they're wearing their uniforms, and the uniforms would be black, not white. And they had badges, right? And there was a whole bunch of them showing up to arrest your buddy, and take your buddy captive. Your buddy the smuggler captive. And so instead, you imagine if that scene were directed by Quentin Tarantino. How would that look? It'd look badass, right? I mean, there'd be blood and gore everywhere. It'd be so awesome to watch happen. You'd see a bunch of badge wearers get their heads turned into canoes, right? Yeah, I mean, so, but like people aren't ready for that. They're like, well, no, it's a violation of laws. They don't know what the hell law means. Most people don't even know what the hell what a law is. They don't know. They don't even know the two laws that govern this planet, which is physics and conscience. They don't even know that. No one teaches this. I had one of the guys comment there. He says well, we need to have the rich people pay for education, and I pointed this out in a very nice way, which is just we already have that. Why do you think you have the school system the way it is? That's paid for by John D. Rockefeller. You already have rich people paying for so-called education, which is why everybody's a bunch of morons. They're just smart enough to read the manual and operate a machine, even though there's no machines to operate now. Now all it is just, I guess, they know how to make lattes and avocado toast or something. I don't know, whatever the hell it is people are doing nowadays for a living. Yeah, they're smart enough to work in gigantic mega corporations that are laying them off and hate them on top of that. You already have the so-called rich doing that. They're already paying for all that. No, we need to take it away and do it our way. Okay. What do you mean? And we're back to that same question. What do you mean by that? Explain it. Walk me through it. And nobody wants to do that, because as with all things, as soon as you tell someone to define their terms, they run out of answers very quickly because they've never really thought about it. So yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so I hope that answers your question. They are filtering. They probably are. It wouldn't surprise me. I have some interesting secret followers of my account. I have to kind of leave it at that because it's all speculation on my part. But it seems as though I have some interesting secret followers that I don't know what the obsession is, but like, maybe it's the type of content. I don't know. I'm in the forestry sphere. The sawmills are getting obliterated, more closures. So that's also because this is my take on that, I suppose, is that there is just, again, less demand because like birth rate wise, and if you followed me for any length of time, you know where I'm trying to go with this, but there just isn't a huge demand. If every Gen Xer, let's say that the boomers never had a war on teen pregnancy, because that was waged by boomers. Sorry, boomers, it's the truth. That's exactly what happened. I remember it growing up with that all the time. Oh my God, your life is over if you have a child. If you get pregnant, oh my God, it's the most horrible thing in the world. Even though there's a very high likelihood that everybody watching this video, in fact, it's a 100% certainty that somewhere in your lineage is some grandmother who was about 13, probably many of them. I don't make the rules, man, and you can argue with biology all you want, and I'm not making any judgments either way. I'm just pointing out that's a reality. And if your sensibilities can't handle that, I'm not for you, because that's just the truth. So the boomers won this war on teen pregnancy, and so a whole bunch of Gen X didn't have a whole bunch of kids. But let's say every Gen Xer had like 5 kids, then there would be a huge demand for all kinds of stuff. And what if every millennial in the US had 5 kids? That would be massive. Imagine the population of the US being something like, 600 million people. There would be demand everywhere. There would be business everywhere. You'd have to try to not make money because you have this up economy. You have a boom, and I use the example of a Ponzi scheme, even though it's not really a Ponzi scheme. It's just life. It's just how it is. And but it sounds like a Ponzi scheme. It does sound like a Ponzi scheme. But unlike a Ponzi scheme, what's supposed to happen is that when demand decreases, your prices are supposed to drop. We don't have that right now. We don't have that. We have this weird Keynesian hybrid nonsense system where prices are never allowed to go down. You're the delusional boomer who bought their house for, back when Robert Downey Jr. got his first DUI, and, for a horseshoe and a string of anal beads. Those guys, they want $2.5 million for those houses that aren't worth that. So yeah, you kind of have to factor that into the equation, that the prices should be coming down. In fact, the price on those houses should be going probably lower than what they pay. But there's this delusion. I used to see this in the pawn business. For those of you who may or may not know and stuff, I was a pawnbroker for a long time, and I would see guys come in with the pre-ban. I don't know how to say this on a TikTok live, but the pre-ban pew-pews, right? And they would come in. They bought them back in 1993, 94, back when there was the so-called ban that existed. And so these guys went out in 94, 95, and they paid these insane prices for these items. What we're talking about, right? And so a Norinco, whatever. Again, underfolder Norinco, you can just type that in and you'll know what it is. Anyway, and they paid $1,800 for it at some show, and then they come into the store in 2005 when there's dozens of them on the wall everywhere, and say, well, yeah, I paid $1,800, so I want to sell this to you for $1,850. And I'm like, I wouldn't even give you $300 for it, because hello, I mean, that's over with. That madness is gone. And there were so many, I'm not kidding about this, there were so many times that these guys, boomers, that's who they were, would just not understand that like, yeah, the bottom fell out of the market and you are on the ass end of the pyramid. Okay, I mean, like, and they can't understand that. They can't realize that that's what happened. Like, yeah, dude, now you're going to lose money. No different than in business. If I overpay for something, I get to lose money. And if do you really, does anybody out there think that I haven't lost money in business? Oh, dude, it happens all the time, right? That's like it'd be like going to a day trader and say, hey, do all of your trades, work out in your favor? Oh yeah, man, that's why I'm like a multi-gazillionaire. No, it's because they lose too. Go to any professional gambler, they'll tell you the same thing. That's reality. I mean, you're taking calculated risks. That's part of business. You take a calculated risk, but remember, it's still a risk. It's still a risk. You still have that to deal with. There's no way out of that. If there wasn't any risk, there would be no profit in it. There would be no reason to do it. That's another part that some of my commie followers don't really understand this. They think that businesses are 100% guarantees. That's not how that's how governments operate. That's not how businesses work. It looks like that on paper because government spending makes it look as though these businesses have all this volume, and they really do not. They do not have all this volume because it's just government spending. And government spending is not market demand. Like, well, but there's a demand for it. No, that's the government demand. That's effectively a command economy. That's really what that is. It's a command economy in all but name. I take old concrete and recycle it into rocks and build pointless buildings. No kidding. Boomers are stubborn brainwashed. Yeah, that's it. What is my ethnicity? I'm British, Irish, French, I'm told. I mean, at least, like I was raised Roman Catholic by my mom, and I believe her side of the family, if I remember right, is mostly British and Irish. And in my dad's case, I think it's pretty well the same. I think there might be a bit of French. And of course, who really knows, right? Because back then there was no real paternity testing, so who knows if my grandfather was my grandfather. The fact that I have all my hair at my age makes me question that. So, in fact, not only do I have all my hair, but I have plenty of it. And it's not gray all the way through yet. Makes me question who exactly was my grandfather. Handsome, thank you. Let's see here. I have to vote with arms, inevitably, naturally. Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of it. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary to kick someone's ass, it's kind of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why is silver and gold going up? Okay, so I can't really comment too terribly much on silver. I'm not an expert on that. You'd want to look up David Morgan, the Silver Guru. I think he goes by silverguru.com. He's really the expert on silver. It's who I would defer you to. But overall, you have the currency. If you want just the overall perspective, it's like, dude, you can't print money to this extent and not have it affect the metals markets. That's just how it is. All the markets are going to be affected by this. Any type of hard asset is going to be affected by printing money because you're just creating more money. You didn't create any more stuff. That's the reality. If you didn't create any more stuff, you just created a bunch of money. All you did was create a bunch of money and create inflation. You didn't create any more stuff. And right now, there's a huge problem in the U.S. where there isn't a whole lot of actual people creating anything. They're not building stuff. A lot of folks don't have any place to put it. One of the things that I'm putting in my house is a CNC table and a bunch of other tools because I have wanted to build stuff for a very, very, very long time. You have to have a place to do it. And of course, there's a lot of people that where would they put that stuff, right? Where do you build the killdozer, right? This is a problem that people have. There's lots of people who want to own killdozers, but where do you build them? You have to have a shop. That's how it works. You have to have some place to do all this, and do it, somewhat clandestine. You got to be able to get your materials. And you have to be able to get your materials to and from. And of course, if you're buying heavy materials, you need to have a truck. And like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you need to have infrastructure to do all of this stuff. Most Americans own almost no infrastructure. That's the real hard truth of it. In fact, it's one of the Gen Z, for example. Let me touch on Gen Z. Like, I know this applies to millennials and it applies to a good chunk of Gen X as well. But let me focus on Gen Z for just a minute here, because I know there's quite a few Gen Z kids that do follow me. The biggest challenge Gen Z has is that in their life isn't that they don't own a house. It's that most of their life has no infrastructure at all from a foundational perspective to do really much of anything. They've been told the same lie that boomers told everybody else. Go to school, get an education, and when you get out, you'll be taken care of. Some company will pay you a bunch of money to pretend to work all day long, and you can stare out a window all day. And just do pretend work, you know, do an email job, do these fake jobs that you know, go, and then when you feel stressed, you go to the massage lounge, and then somebody massages your shoulders. Then you go get a catered breakfast, and then you go to the mimosa bar, and then you go to the puppy therapy room because you just feel like you want to, you know, bare your soul to everybody. And then you go in for a meeting where you know, hand down the talking pillow. Like, this is the kind of weird stuff that people think, and it's like, none of that was real. That was always a scam. That was always a lie. It's how you con people. You show them, oh look, it's the Potemkin cities. It's Potemkin cities that the Soviets used to have. You build this really cool city and you make everything look like everything works awesome. But then if you scratch the surface enough, you find out this is all fake. Yeah. There's a movie. There was actually a movie with James Franco and Seth Rogen. I think it's Seth Rogen. Anyway, called The Interview. And I remember seeing this, and I'm thinking, like, this is actually kind of accurate, the way that they're portraying this. They go to North Korea, and they're showing this, like, oh, look, see how awesome everything, and it's all for show. It was fake. That's a lot of these fake jobs that everybody's applying for. Like, you know, yeah, I want to work at so-and-so company because I can just do whatever I want, and I just have to answer 2 or 3 emails and do a team building meeting and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's fake. It's daycare for a lot of women, really. I mean, that's the truth. It's just they're just corporate concubines. You know, they're just in corporate harems, and I hate to put it that way, but that's the reality. It's entertainment 720. Right? I mean, you ever remember that you know, in Parks and Rec, entertainment 720? It's that. It's like a fantasy nonsense. It's not real. You know, reality is learning things, you know, it's like learning how to weld, learning how to, you know, repair tires, learning how to do roofing properly, you know, across several different types of roofing. Like, these are things that people actually need. And as I pointed out, many of those trades are going to start flooding out here pretty soon. It's knowing how to replace a toilet. I mean, something as simple as that, right? I mean, it sounds there, but there's no glamour. No, that's why it's called work. If it wasn't work, it would be called happy fun time. Not to get all Red Foreman about that, but I mean, like, dude, it's the truth. That would be called happy fun time. It wouldn't be called work. The only reason people do work is with the understanding that they get paid enough money that they can actually take that money and go do something that they want to do with it. They can go do happy fun time. As I've said probably 3 dozen times on this channel, you know, I don't have to pay you to come over to my house and watch my gigantic television and sit in a beanbag, eat pizza, and drink beer all day. In fact, you'll pay me for that, right? Yeah, so that's happy fun time. Okay, that's you know, I don't need to pay you to do that. You know, but I do need to pay you if I need a hose bib that needs to be replaced. I do need to pay you if, like, the 5th injector on my engine needs to be replaced, which it actually does. You know, like, I don't need to pay you to fix the leaky differential on my truck. Okay. Dollar going down, yes. Yeah, it is a way of putting that, is that it isn't price go up, it's dollar go down. But it's too abstract to teach. I don't know how accurate this is. Maybe someone can correct me, but I saw this thing that said that, like, you know, the something like like 40% of Americans can no longer read above a 6th grade level. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but that's terrifying if that's true. Usury, I'm a millennial kid, millennial, have 4 kids, need to have more, build back the army. No kidding. Dude, if you can afford it, man, like I said, it's good work if you can get it, right? So there's literally no way to fix the problem. However, those in control will never want to. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff can be fixed. It just can't be fixed the way that you're going about it. Years ago when I was a kid, I don't know if I ever told this story or not, but when I was a little kid, a long time ago, I put a hole in the sheetrock in the apartment. I don't remember what I was doing. I think I threw a baseball at it or something like that, and it put like a hole in the sheetrock. And I was trying to fix it with spackle, right? I mean, and I was trying to fix it, and one of the maintenance guys actually had seen it, and he says, yeah, I see that you're trying to fix this. He says, you're trying to go about it the wrong. Yes, it can be fixed, but no, not the way you're fixing it. The way you're trying to go about it. We need to cut out a square, go over the edges, re-screw it in there, mud and tape, and yeah, I mean, so it's like, yeah, can a lot of this stuff be fixed? It certainly can. It's just not the way that people are going about it. It just isn't. It isn't in the cards the way they're going about this now. They'd actually have to get serious about it, and people would have to be willing to take the responsibility of what comes after that. I'm always on that topic where it's like, okay, well, you can have a war. I'm all good with you guys want to have a war. You want to have a war this weekend? That's fantastic. I got nothing going. Actually, this weekend busy. Next weekend, we can do a war if you like. But what is the goal? Or is it just we don't like what we have? Okay, that's fine. You can you can not like what you have, but do you have an idea of what you want to replace it with? This shuts most people down on all sides, by the way. Like, I'm not kidding about this. I have shut more people down completely on this because they don't know how to answer that. Like, yeah, and see, you have to think a little further through on that. That way, you know when the war is over. You see, if you have a very clearly defined goal, wars don't typically have to go on for 100 years. That's ridiculous. No, you just have a clearly defined goal. If you wanted a suggestion, my suggestion would be to go back to the Constitution and Bill of Rights, because that pretty much leaves everybody alone. That's what that basically says. It's what all that stuff says. It says, do whatever you want, we're just gonna leave you alone. That's really what it was. That's really all it says. But it failed us. No, it didn't fail you. You're just disarmed. That's the reality. But I've got my OT-6. Yeah, that's not enough. You should have had cruise missiles. What's your favorite macroeconomic concept? I don't know what you mean by that. I'd like you to expand on that if you wouldn't mind, because I don't know that I have necessarily a favorite. I don't think of it in those terms. I see an economy as people engaged in commerce. So it's why I see the world a little differently than most of your traditional economics professors. I know that there are professors who follow me, they've told me. And they follow my work. I don't know how much of that they integrate into their classroom. They probably don't do a whole lot. I don't imagine they put a whole lot in their classroom. But even though most really can't argue back, they can't argue against it, because yeah, dude, it's just I'm pointing out reality. I'm not speaking from theory. And most people who come from the economic background come from just reading lots of economic books and theory from other people, as opposed to doing this stuff in the real world. Because a lot of times, you know how this works. A lot of stuff in theory, it sounds good in theory until you go out and try and do it in the real world. And then a lot of stuff falls apart. It's the analogy I've given many times is, would you rather fly on a plane with a pilot who has 110 hours of flight time, which is pretty low, but it's all been in the sky? It's all been up in the sky, and it's in the real life. Or would you rather have your pilot have 10,000 simulator hours, but they've never actually flown in the sky themselves, ever? I know which one I would choose. I say this as a pilot myself. I know which one I would choose. I don't care how much simulation time you have, until you go out in the real world and get your head kicked in a few times. And I mean this seriously. I'm telling Gen X, or not Gen X, or Gen Z, millennials, until you go out in the real world and actually get your head kicked in a few times and lose a lot of money. Nothing will teach you faster how something works than losing money, especially if it's your own. Nothing. There is nothing that will teach that faster. And it's up to you to then understand the lesson that you just got taught. That's kind of how life works. I mean, I'm shamelessly borrowing from Bob Kiyosaki, but he's not wrong about this. That, at least that particular statement, he's not wrong about that. That, like, yeah, life will give you a lesson, and then it's kind of up to you to deal with whatever that lesson was. You know, if you don't figure it out, well, then you didn't look hard enough. You needed to tear into that lesson a bit and do some self-examination. So the more self-examination you do, the more honest you can be with yourself, the more self-actualized you get. The more self-actualized you get, the more secure you get in yourself. The more secure you get in yourself, the easier it is to do stuff like this. It isn't because I'm so great and know so much. It isn't because of genius. I've pointed this out on many occasions. There's nothing about me that screams genius. Nothing. I'm just a guy who's played this game so long that I know where everything is. That's all it is. You play Zelda long enough, you will figure it out. I mean, this is right. So yeah, I'm not saying Earth is Zelda. Well, I kind of am. Mark Passio fan. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry. I probably should know who that is, but I don't know who that is. If they're a politician or something like that. Hold on. Crap. Hold on here. I gotta go back now. Wow, it scrolled on me really fast, so I apologize. People need to do the billing for those companies. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know what you were referring to. Just because it was too far back. I'm sorry. This is by design, I guess, when they keep insufficient imperial system in the code. Yeah, probably, or inefficient. Yeah, I mean, governments don't get rid of laws. You know, especially when they keep laws and then just stop enforcing them until they need to have it enforced. That's how governments work. I mean, remember that always gives you the upper hand. You always have the upper hand if the law applies to somebody else and not to you. That, by the way, is, you know, for the people who say that, like, the Constitution failed. No, what happened is you're disarmed, and you're not supposed to let them do that. That's as far as I can probably elaborate on digitally speaking. So, because I have to police myself, unfortunately. I mean, otherwise, through no fault of what I would do and stuff, you know, my account will disappear instantaneously. If somebody asked if I was writing a book, the answer is yes. I'm just not really promoting a whole lot of stuff like that. I'm not a very good self-promoter. I never have been. Yes, I am writing a book in paper, and it will probably only ever be on paper. And the reason that is because if it makes it to the digital world, I will be unpersoned, just like a light switch. It'll be gone. All of this, gone. Because in print, I can tell you, I can say stuff in print that I can't say probably anywhere. I fully expect it to be banned, just so you know. But yeah, I mean, because it's how it is. And the thing is it's basically all economic. It's, you know, some of it's culture war related, but it's culture war related only because of it's downstream of the economics. Does that make sense? But if you say any of this kind of stuff, you know, about, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's just certain things you just cannot say digitally, so that's how it works. And the code is much more complicated in the EU and Asia. Probably, yeah. Japanese outlets have no ground hole. I don't know what that means, sorry. Bears Packers this weekend. Let's no kidding. Actually, I have deliveries on Monday and stuff. Again, next weekend is good for me. So, 100 Years of War, 100 Years of High Profit. That is what it tends to be. That's. I mean, I saw that there was a video by I think he goes by the handle Older Millennial, and his stuff's pretty cool. I mean, you know, he's better spoken than I am, in my opinion. I mean, most people are way better spoken than I am. I'm pretty common when I speak. I don't do high chant. I'm not like Sargon of Akkad. I don't know if you've ever seen Carl Benjamin. I wish I could speak that well. It's, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, he has the accent and everything. It's everything he says just sounds like it sounds like it's someone with like a 400 IQ talking to you, and I wish I could speak that well. But yeah, I mean, if you have 100 years, you have all these wars going on, and you make a lot of profit off them. But I saw Older Millennial did this video, and he was talking about like in 1914, World War I started right after 1913, which was when the Federal Reserve started, and it's like, wow, and we had all these companies who made a bunch of profits, and they found out that war is exceedingly profitable. Yeah, there's actually a whole movie called Schindler's List, actually. In fact, that's actually part of the dialogue from Oskar Schindler, played by, and by the way, I'm making no judgments one way or the other about the movie. I'm just talking about it from a film perspective. Fair enough? And Liam Neeson, the character who plays Oskar Schindler, or the actor who plays Oskar Schindler, says, I've never found something more profitable. And it's like, I finally found out what I needed in my life. It was war, because he made so much money off of it. Yeah, I mean, it's extremely profitable, and it's a shame. Hard money ends that. That's the reason why, of course, I mean, those of us who are hard money advocates, whether it's Peter Schiff or others, Schiff is a bit more political than I am, but yeah, it ends like all of this. It ends a lot of wars, and it ends them very quickly, because there's no way to pay for it. Most wars will bankrupt most countries very quickly, especially if you can't really force your people to go fight the wars. So for some smart corporate connect, yeah, exactly. It's how you get rich nowadays. You just go to the government and you say, hey, I've got these awesome mil-spec popsicle sticks. They're $600 a piece. Put a bill in Congress that you need to buy 1 million of them from me. So that way I get $600 million, no bid, cost plus fixed fee, sole source contract for these mil-spec popsicle sticks. And yeah, and then you just run down to Michael's and grab some popsicle sticks, a big bag of them, and there you go. I mean, that's how it works. I'm serious. That's how you get rich nowadays, is you just have them print you a bunch of money, and then poof, you're part of the rich class. But there's a catch. You probably have to go to the island, more than likely. They're not going to do that. They're not just going to give, think about it. Money's a weapon. I don't think people really think like this, but I mean, I have to, without saying, anything at the island activity, because I can't talk about that kind of stuff here. But yeah, I mean, money's a weapon, and with lots of money, you have lots of weapons. Do you not? Yeah, and so they're not just going to let anybody make a bunch of money. It's like if you want to be part of the club, you have to be controllable. Otherwise, it's like then you're going to be if you just have a lot of money and you're uncontrollable and you can do whatever you want. What if you disagree with them? Well, then you can fund the other side. Nobody wants to. They're like, and it's, oh my God, that's yeah, that's. It's the T word that I can't see on TikTok. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's how it is. So. Units full of migrant professors, especially in STEM classes. Yeah, I believe it. Many of them here from third world countries like India and Honduras. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately it's become a huge industry, and it's profitable. That's the reality. That's why people do anything. It's profitable to them, and it's profitable for someone to bring in cheaper labor and then just make a cut of it and then never have to work themselves. Like I said, I mean, it's how it is. The products that I would make, that I would actually build would be, I would want to build them here, and I would want to build them with Americans and American know-how and ingenuity, and I would want to build them with American quality, like actual quality, like the old school quality. I'll give you an example. I needed a shovel. I needed 2 shovels. And you're like, oh, just run down to Lowe's or Home Depot. No, those are garbage. You know how you know that? Take a couple of shovels and you just bang them together and they'll go clunk, something like that. Yeah, that's garbage steel. That's kind of how you tell it. The shovels that I bought, when you clang them together, they go ping. Yeah, that's how you know this is quality. That's how that works. And you have to, I have to order that stuff special I had to find them online, somebody online who actually made that stuff. That's how bad this is getting, because yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff is crap. And so, after a while you kind of learn to know the difference a little bit. It's the same thing with chains. I pull a flatbed, so I have chains and binders and such. And you know, if you take the chains and you just 2 pieces and you ping them together, they go ping like that. That's how you can tell it's fairly high quality steel. So it's not always 100%, but that's usually a pretty good way of looking at that. And I was also looking for kind of a good shovel, you know, something. You know, I was looking for a shovel that says, you know, I'm doing okay, but I'm not afraid to go grave robbing occasionally. You know, should the occasion arise for me to go, oh, sorry, it's called archaeology now. We call it archaeology, not grave robbing. But if I needed to go doing archaeology, well, then I would have a shovel to do so. Let's see here. Progress requires, oh, hold on here. Stop TikTok, thank you. Okay. College level STEM education to all. I don't know what that means, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what we're referring to. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what people are doing with college degrees anymore nowadays. Almost all of them are not virtual. There isn't a degree now, I don't think, from a pure business standpoint. I don't think there's a degree worth getting now. Like none of them, including medicine. I think none of them are, not for the amount of money you pay. It's sort of like, I put it in the same category as any other business. Like, I mean, if anybody's heard me talk about like just regular business stuff occasionally that I do bring up periodically, that in the real world of business, if somebody came to me and said, Axel, I want to start a business, I'd say, okay, great. What do you want? What are you thinking you're going to do? And like, okay, hey, I'm gonna buy some land, build a building, and then I'm gonna put my restaurant in there or something like that. And I would probably say, I think that is an enormous amount of money to tie up for something that unless you have some kind of way to get a lot of people in there and make an awful lot of money, that is a enormous amount of money, capital outlay to do. And I would probably try and talk you out of it, especially if you had $3 or $4 million to do that. Like, there just seems like and again, unless it's your passion. Unless it's something that like you want to do and you would do it even if you weren't making any money. Even if you made a plug nickel out of the place. You just would do it because you wanted to open a really nice restaurant. Okay, fine. You know, I mean, like, I can't touch you on that. That's true. The best you can do at that point is just try to make sure that your business is run well enough that you're at least not losing money. Ideally, that's what you would want to do. You would want to at least get to the point where you're just not underwater. So, I need it immediately. Which one? What? Oh, Stinger missiles? Yeah, probably. Don't call me a fed, but I think you shouldn't police yourself so much. No. It's more algorithm. It has nothing to really do with any of that. I mean, you either have free speech or you don't. That's how I look at it. We either have free speech or we don't. And unfortunately, the algorithms are, I'm convinced of this, this is just my techno theory. If you want my tinfoil hat on this one, okay, fine. I think that all these algorithms are connected now. I don't think you can I don't think you're allowed to start a social media business model and not be told that you have to somehow be a part of this and everything gets censored and categorized, and make sure that everything is ghettoized to very specific people, because you know we can't have, you wouldn't want subversive stuff that I talk about to get into the ears of normies who start going, hold on, I guess that kind of makes sense. Yeah, you wouldn't want them hearing that, because then normies start thinking, and the last thing anybody who's running a scam wants anybody to do, let me put yourself in that situation, right? Put yourself in the so-called bad guy position. The very last thing you would want if you're running a scam is for anybody to start thinking. That's the last thing you want. You don't want them to start thinking, because if they start thinking, they may start thinking, is this a scam? You don't want that. So you don't want people asking questions like that, and especially the type of questions that we ask here. You know, my field research has been pretty open. You can go back through my body of work. I think I asked some pretty decent questions that I have yet to hear answers for from a lot of people who are supposed to be in the know. And I still don't hear any answers. Yeah, it isn't genius. It's just playing the game long enough. That's all it is. So chess is that way. I'm not a big chess player. But chess is that way. Chess is just move, 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 move until you finally, the other person runs out of moves. That's all it is. Irrelevant question, favorite band. Favorite brand for everyday carry. Oh, HK. I have the Hans Gruber Pistola. That's what I use, and have for a long time actually. The P7 M8. I've had probably 10 of them in my lifetime. Again, it's an oddball. It's not something that everybody see. It's not something you see every day out of the world. But I've had one for a pretty long time. That, and I also have the Desert Eagle from RoboCop. I actually do have that gun, that one from the movie. I actually do have that one. So, at least that's my kind of piecing it together. Kind of the origin and everything. It's like that's pretty close. There's no way of really knowing because it would be through a prop company and so on. But it's like I've been kind of piecing together. Like, no, I think that's actually it, based on the internal threads for the muzzle, the fake muzzle that they would have to use because of union rules. So, and it's the production. Most people are over edited. Yeah, they really are. Let's see here. Real Schindler helped only rich. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean that's. Think about it. I mean that's how most people would be, right? There's a few of us, we would help our friends. If we had $1 billion, we would help our friends. But at a certain point, you can only help so many. That's kind of how it works. The communist countries are the only ones that actually manufacture anything anymore. Cheap labor will do that, right? I mean, there's a reason why Nixon had to open relations with China. It was to bail out China. China was having some serious problems. And you could say it was humanitarian, maybe. I don't think so. I consider it a bit more provincial than that. But Nixon opens relations with China, and the rest is kind of history. And slowly there was that giant sucking sound that Ross Perot talked about in the 90s, in the early 90s. So it's the other reason, by the way, that I have the issue with boomers that I do, is because the boomers had Barry Goldwater. They had Pat Buchanan, they had Ross Perot, they had Ron Paul, and they slam dunked all of them in favor of like Bubba and Bush and these, like, all of the worst possible people that you could have ever shoved into that job. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, cheap labor will do that. I mean, think about it. I mean, if all you have to do is just tell somebody, you have to go to work or your social credit score is going to go to 0 and you're going to sleep on the streets tonight. Well, that's pretty effective, isn't it? Russia funding Ukraine army via Poland and Baltic states. All diesel in Ukraine army is Russia. I have no way of. I mean, I'm assuming if you're right, but I have no way of confirming that. There's a Chinese professor on YT that talks about conspiracy and talks. I've seen his stuff actually. It's interesting. I mean, some of the stuff that he talks about is rather interesting. I've seen some of his work that I have issue with, just because I think objectively there is some problem with it. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. I actually did a video on it. I think I stitched it. In fact, it's somewhere on TikTok, where it was where I pointed out that I don't remember what the topic was, but it was something that was like, I felt was kind of like objective. And I'm not even dissing the guy, because I mean, a lot of the stuff that he talks about is pretty accurate, actually. I mean, from what I've heard. But some of it is academia. Some of it is just kind of academia showing, where it's like, yeah, the theory, the more theory shows in rather than concrete on the ground experience. So, but he is an interesting guy, no question. You don't produce anything anymore, but yeah, whatever. Let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and okay, there we go. Let's see here. Yes, the money can't buy rare earth magnets for the Pentagon nowadays. Yeah, no kidding. Economics, culture war talk. It's just a topic. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure what you're asking. Hang tight. I have to, this thing did this. Are you wanting to suggest a topic? I don't know. That was kind of the promise of crypto or orange internet money, I suppose, and non-centralized financial system, but they ruined it. Yeah, I mean, so that's the thing, is that your money, because if we let's use this as an example. This is a great example, but I'll use this to give you at least just sort of my thought on this. You can't divorce your money from your production. Right now we have a whole world full of people who are they've lost the correlation between being productive and money. You have to have both in order, and there has to be a balance that's part of the market. The market's just people. So it balances it out. It balances your labor rate. It balances your pricing. Pricing is very important because that's what gives you. That's so you know where you should sit, and that's how you know what something is worth. And when you meddle with the money, you distort that. Well, the idea with, like, for example, crypto or orange internet money is to fix that problem where it makes it a finite number that everybody knows what it is, and so there's no way to manipulate that. But the problem is that unless people are transacting in that, and if it just all sits and does nothing, it's stagnant. And you need to have circulation, something called velocity. You need to have some kind of velocity, and there really isn't any. And it isn't, people aren't using orange internet money or crypto to, like, buy stuff. They're converting it to dollars in order to buy stuff. And every time you convert it to dollar, you keep it alive. That's why I keep pointing out that the goal here is to bring down the entire US dollar and have it collapse. But the only way to do that is to inflate it to worthlessness and make it the joke that it actually is. And that's a tough one because so many people are addicted to easy money, cheap credit, things like that. And half of the country is addicted to the idea of just getting money by existing. I don't mean the welfare cases. Oh, there's a bunch of people on welfare that's a problem, but it's not half. No. I mean, we're talking about boomers who just go and refinance, get their 17th HELOC and take a bunch of money out to go buy another toy. That's one part of that. It's the endless borrowing. Anybody see that video I did on private equity? I had a private equity company, or some guys trying to do private equity contact us and set up this, like, Zoom meeting type thing, and they went through and explained what it was that they wanted to do with our company, and it was basically just, you don't really want to produce anything, you don't want to do anything with it, you don't even know what we do, you just want to borrow a bunch of money. Like, that's all people know. It's just, you know what I mean? Like, there's this loss between production and money. If the production and money were back together in the proper balance where they would be, people would be screaming to be paid in hard money only. They would not be, they would say, I don't want dollars anymore, because dollars are valueless. They have no intrinsic or mathematical value, and you're printing them to worthlessness, and I can't buy anything with it. Men don't work for money, they work for that which the money will buy. And if the money doesn't buy anything, then they're going to stop working. Or they're going to complain more. And the guys who complain more, well, those guys got to get replaced. True story. So that was the kind of, I guess, hold on. Just start your own bank. Yeah, no kidding. That's how it always works. Can't compete anymore unless you what the fuck? Let's see here. I don't know how to, like, delete somebody, but whatever, because it's like these are people that are just stupid. Let's see. Yes, many Americans study medicine in Cuba for free. They can, sure. I mean, it's somebody else pays for it. I mean, it's free to them, sure. I don't see any reason why not. I mean, if it's free to them, then go right ahead and do so. The difference is that if you're dealing with like your culture, then maybe you feel some sense of you put a sense of importance on what you're doing in medicine for people that you know and care about, right? But if they're just a paycheck to you, what do you care? It's a problem, right? I mean, it really is an issue. And that's why you want to have, it's why cultures exist and borders and all that. That's where all that stuff comes from. The one guy called the airline crisis. When did I call that? I don't remember. Springfield 1911. Nickel. So the question is nickel finish. It's NP3. They don't even do it anymore. Robar doesn't even do the NP3 apparently anymore. But this is an older. It's an older one, so it has the NP3 finish on it. So not the shiny nickel, but the satin nickel. Do you have the Elon Musk flamethrower? No, but I did see that there was that company, I can't remember what it's called, but they make a flamethrower that it's not the short, I mean, it's like the long one. It throws a flame, something like 100 feet. It's like, it's a lot. You're a breath of fresh air. I hope so, I try to. China average salaries higher in Russia and Africa, $1,000 with much lower prices. Yeah, probably. I mean, you can do that. That's just a trade. That's what all these arguments about tariffs are. It's just because the dollar buys more in other countries. So and that inflation has to go somewhere, and they have to stick to somebody. So now they're sticking to the Americans with tariffs, or not with tariffs, but this kind of tariff, right? So and this will be controversial, but I actually support the idea of tariffs in general, but not this kind of tariff. This is punitive tariff. This is just tariff to just take a bunch of money into the government at the direct expense of Americans, which is fine. You can do that again on a small level, but then you wouldn't have income taxes and property taxes and all these other taxes, would you? And I realize that the Orange Messiah is, again, he says a lot of things. Oh, we're getting rid of income taxes. No, you're probably not. You're not going to do that. They're going to get rid of income taxes on paper, and it'll be like it's not going to apply to you. And then give it about 2 years, then the Overton window will shift, and a bunch of so-called Democrats will get in, because it's all fake. This is all just theater. Will get in, and they'll change it, and then all the people that an income tax no longer applied to, well, now it's going to apply again. And then so now you'll have giant tariffs and income taxes and all these other taxes that'll be there. It's just how this works. It's like the VAT tax. As soon as you let them do the VAT tax and say, yeah, hey, we promise if you give us this tax, then we'll cut government spending. No, why don't you cut government spending right now? Why don't you cut the budget right now? Why don't you cut the budget by 90% right now? They won't do it. You need to make them perform first. Have them perform, and then you can give them something. But that's not how it'll work. Unfortunately, it's just going to go the way it always goes, where people will just believe and they'll say, okay, yeah, we'll vote for this guy, and this guy's going to do it. And he's not going to do any of this stuff. The only way that you're going to believe that somebody will actually do what they said they're going to do is if they do it basically in their inauguration speech. I would give somebody about a minute. Like if it were me personally, this is just how I would handle it. If I were doing an inauguration speech, within the first minute, it would be the following people are fired. And I wouldn't even say thank you. I would just say, nope, we got a lot of work to do. The following group of people are fired, and here's a whole list of people that are going to be hunted. Like the Running Man style. Here's a whole list of them. And, you people better find a hole to crawl in. Or leave the country or something. This, a whole list of departments right there too. Americans are getting revenge, right now. And it'd be fast. Sort of call them cheap workforce. I don't know what you're talking about here. When you guys do these multiple posts and stuff, dude, I don't even know what you're talking about when you get too far back with that. Let's see, average salary is a higher. Again, I don't know, like, relative to what? That's, come on. They made Ron Paul sound crazy. Yeah, I mean, he was the only sane one up there, but they made him sound crazy, and they kind of put him into that category. And of course, I mean, it's just how it is. I'm only a boomer by a couple of years. We're not. Oh no, I know. I'm well aware of that. It's just like Gen X. I mean, some of the older Gen Xers are really not a whole lot of difference as boomers, actually. Let's see, debating wars profitability during the discussion. What is it? AI summary? This must be a TikTok thing, because I don't know if that's anybody else. Dollars pointless. Maybe UBI will be the end game. They'll probably do UBI at some point. I mean, for those of you that are wondering, just keep in mind what UBI is. All UBI is a bailout to landlords and companies so they don't have to lower their prices. That's all UBI is. UBI isn't there to benefit you. UBI is just because they know that you're going to get your UBI check, for example, your figurative check, and then you're just going to go spend that in these gigantic mega corporations. That's it. It's like, well, but it works for me. Like, yeah, if you have a high enough social credit score, because that's where that leads. Is that going to be, like, oh well, if you have an unpopular. Does anybody out there think that I will ever receive a UBI check? Yeah, probably not. I find that highly doubtful that will happen, because I mean, like, it's going to be for people that are part of the program, right? I started pushing back on this when I was a little kid. By about third grade, I noticed that was the whole thing. It was always about, do what we want you to do and we'll give you this. But if you don't do it, like, that's how you train a dog, dude. It's the truth. That's exactly how you train a dog. And I'm just too feral for that. So that's just me. That's just my personality. So when I see that I'm trying to be trained to be like, hold on a second, what if I don't want to do that? What if I have other questions? What if I have other things that I see out here that are objective that I want to explore? All right? I mean, you're born a scientist. Everybody out there, you're born a scientist. Every person on this planet is born a natural scientist. When you're a baby, it doesn't mean difference what country you're from. Cultures, borders, like when you're a baby, none of that stuff means anything to you. That's later on. That's learned behavior later on. No, you're born and you learn about the world in which you live, and you do that naturally. And as you grow, it gets more complicated. That's just normal. And so like video games, it just progressively gets more complicated. So that's how it is. And so you're born, that. But then when you it's what is that? There's that Supertramp song. Bring up Supertramp, but like there's that Logic song. Yeah, it's that. It is accurate. That's why it's popular. It's because it is fairly accurate. Let's see here. Where do you disagree with von Mises? On the minimum wage. That's probably the biggest disagreement that I have with the von Mises. I'm not talking about Ludwig von Mises himself. Ludwig von Mises himself, were he alive, he and I share the same birthday, actually. But were he alive, I could make a very strong case for the minimum wage, and he would probably agree with me. And the reason being isn't because of genius. It's because, it's in dollars. It's fake anyway. This is all monopoly money garbage anyway. If you actually had a real economy, then you're right. No, you don't need a minimum wage. Sure, if you have a real economy. We don't have a real economy and haven't had one for a very long time. So if you're going to do that, you have to argue from that perspective, and that's the perspective that I give. And I have yet to have anybody be able to crush that. They can't, because as soon as they try to crush it, I'm like, okay, so explain to me how it is a central bank is anything to do with capitalism, and they can't. It's because it spirals out of control, and it usually traps them into. I can't say it here on TikTok because I can't even say my own words on TikTok, but you can go and look on bird's eye, you'd have to scroll back, way back. But I mean, like, I've answered this question on many occasions, like where it starts off with the sort of the chat thing, where it's like, why does capitalism, communism have a central bank? Why do they both have central banks? And then the responding person is like, well, capitalism doesn't need a central bank. Like, okay, but yes, it has one. So, what's up with that? Like, oh, well, you don't understand. 1913, we were hijacked. Okay, we were hijacked. So that means that this isn't our country any longer. And so therefore, the lock and load should happen like right now. Well, the stock market went up and I'm really rich and comfortable and number go up and GDP, etc. It's like, yeah, so in other words, socialism worked well for you. And that's the end of it. That's the end of the conversation because I win. Sorry. I mean, it's just like, so you're telling me socialism worked well for you. That's great. I'm happy that it worked well for you. It doesn't work for anybody else. Everybody else is broke. So, well, why are they broke? Well, because of the Federal Reserve. Okay. Then the lock and load and unload should happen right now. Well, no, because socialism, this is the problem. I've never met a more socialist group of people than capitalists losing money in their own casino. They get socialist like that, like instantaneously. As soon as they lose money, they instantly become socialists and they want to socialize all their losses. It's the truth. Let's see here. What do you think about fake nation building like Venezuela currently? It's a bad idea. We shouldn't be doing it. We're broke. It'd be like you asking me. It'd be like, I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying, like, it'd be like you asking me, like, man, we owe all this money. We have like $200,000 in student loans. We've got $100,000 in credit card debts. We've got 2 giant Escalades in our driveway, and we owe money on all of it. Let's remodel the kitchen after we just lost both of our jobs. That's what it's like. I mean, it's like, dude, I mean, there's no money for any of this. No, Venezuela's on its own. I made fun of Venezuela, of Milei, I think is his name, where it's like, dude, or no, Venezuela is, I'm thinking of Argentina, sorry. I always get those two confused in my head for some reason. But no, it would apply to Venezuela too. It would just, like, no, you shouldn't be doing any of that. Venezuela's on its own. Boats and all, I just don't care. Let's see here. China charges no income taxes. Its citizens. Yeah, I know. I'm again. It's like I'm not arguing whether or not what China does or doesn't do in their own internal affairs as a country. However, I see other accounts that China has plenty of poverty to deal with there. I mean, like, look, you can put LED lights on everything. And if you put enough LED lights on it, it's like you walk into a room with a bunch of LED lights and it feels like you should be listening to like the Glitch Mob and Daft Punk. But yeah, I mean, China has problems. They're not a perfect solution. None of these things are perfect. They're not that I've ever seen. The closest you can get is just having honest commerce and hard money and then letting the chips fall where they may. Well, but that'll create a hierarchy. Yes, it'll create a hierarchy of competence. That's what it creates. That's what ends up happening. It's the people that are the most competent and the people who do the most work and are making the most money. That doesn't mean they're the smartest either, by the way. Well, because that'll make the dumb people poor. No, it won't. No, the people who are just not too good to change a toilet out for somebody, and charge them money for it. That's who makes the most money. In a hard money economy, the people who make the money are the ones who just are willing to go do the work. It's slaying the dragons, right? I mean, Simon Sinek. I don't know how you spell his last name. I think it's spelled with an S. Simon Sinek gave probably one of the greatest. I mean, again, he's another one of these guys that I wish I could be that articulate, and because he's so good at it. He gave the analogy of why it's good to be the king, right? I mean, like the alpha, right? Why are you the alpha? Well, because it's expected of you that if there's a dragon at the gate, well, you have to go deal with that, not the rest of the village, because you're the alpha. You get first choice of meat, first choice of mate. So the trade-off is that, well, you need to deal with all those problems that we don't want to deal with. the thing is that all of your alphas that exist, you know, I mean, I'm using alpha as in the generic sense. All of your alphas that exist, they're not getting first choice of meat or first choice of mate, are they? Not anymore. All the guys who would be willing to do all of those jobs that nobody wants to do, right? That's why it pays. It's because nobody else wants to do it. All right. I mean, put yourself in that situation. Some of you are in that situation now. You do a job that other people don't want to do, or they can't do. They are either incompetent, not in a negative way. They just can't do it. I can't play professional hockey. I don't feel as though I'm slighted because I can't play professional hockey. You know what I'm saying? So I either can't do it, or they don't want to do it. And it's like, this is just how this works. Well, but if you were cool, man, you would just come over and do it for me for free. Yeah, I'm not cool. Sorry. I mean, I have my problems to deal with in my life. This is the same with a nation. The same with a country. Like, dude, we have a lot of problems here to deal with. We really can't be bailing you out again, Ottoman Empire. Sorry. If you guys blow each other up, then you blow each other up. And, you know, that's not our problem. That's kind of it. And so, sent you a message about your injector on your 6NZ. No, I'm not. It's actually on my car. It's actually on my personal car. I have an LS3 engine, and number 5 injector is going bad. So, no, I don't have a 6NZ. I have a 7CZ. I don't tell people that, but if you know, you know. And no, I don't usually tell people what engine I actually have, because then, you know, it's rare as hen's teeth. If people still believe voting works after the Trump mom died, yeah, I know. That was actually pretty. People should have been made believers after that. That, like, dude, this is all for show. This is all just, come on. Fish. Hold on. Doggone it. I hate when TikTok does this to me. Relocate out of the U.S. What solutions to survive? I'm not a very good candidate to ask something like that. There's a bunch of passport bros that would ask what they say. I would point this out to you, just so you know, word to the wise. Most countries don't want Americans. May come as a surprise. They want American money. You want proof of that? If we rounded up all of our homeless people in LA and Portland and Seattle and shipped them to Tijuana, what would Mexico say? Mexico would come uncorked. They would say, this is an act of war. Yeah, kind of like migrant caravans, right? They want American money. And like the Willie Nelson song goes, you know, when you have no more money, I have no more time. And that's exactly what it will be like. So yes, you can live there for some exotic place for like, oh man, you can live like a king for $38 a day, as long as you have $38 a day. If that $38 a day goes away, you may be asked to leave right away. Is there hotter women in Oregon or Texas? What a good question. I don't know. I suppose it depends. I don't know. I mean, like, depends on the part. It depends on the part of town. So, I mean, obviously, if you go to where all the corporate concubines are, the best looking women are usually the corporate concubines, right? That's how it works. That's why they got the job. No one will admit that, but it's the truth, and I so don't care. Feminists can get pissed at me all you want, but like, dude, it's the truth. You know, like, you know, the chicks with the 70% hip to waist ratio and the tightly the firm aerobicized ass and everything. Yeah, they have no problem at all getting these like jobs in the corporate hierarchy where they get to answer an email 2 or 3 times a day, and that's it. Come on, it's the truth. It's the truth. Awesome disguise, and then disguise. Who sets minimum wage for? Who sets the minimum wage for billionaires and Trump cronies? I don't understand the question. I really don't. Like, I mean, the federal minimum wage in the U.S. is $7.25 an hour. So I don't know. I don't understand the question that you're asking me. If you're asking, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand. But as far as like there isn't a maximum, if that's what you're curious. What?
He said maximum wage.
Oh, it says maximum wage. Yeah, I misread that. My bad. I don't know. I don't think there is a maximum wage. There isn't one for CEOs either, that I know of. Bankers live in communism. Yeah, probably. That sounds about right to me. Have you seen Peter Zekan's videos? What are your take on demographic collapse and deglobalization? I haven't seen his videos. I don't even know who that is. Sorry. But it's like demographic collapse. Yeah, it's, you know, there's a video, if you scroll down, I don't know, about a year and a half, 2 years ago that I did, where I'm actually in my Jeep. It was right after a hurricane, and I was pointed that out, and I pointed out that, like, this is the math catching up with people, because you have to have enough people to support all of this, otherwise prices collapse. That's what most of your bankers and corporate oligarchs and governments are worried about. They're not worried about Americans, you know, not having children because, oh my gosh, you know, we as a culture would like to survive. No, they don't care about you as a culture, too. They don't care about that. What they care about is, can we maintain prices? Can we maintain all of this stuff, because we borrowed a bunch of money in an up economy. Now we need to keep everything going, and we owe a bunch of money. Like, that's all this comes down to. So, you know, they're worried about demographic collapse because their tax base is going away, right? They're cattle. I mean, think of it. Put yourself in a farmer's position. If you farm cattle and all of your cattle decide they are no longer going to breed, how do you handle that? Probably replace them, don't you? Yeah, that's a reality there. Deglobalization. I haven't seen deglobalization yet. I'm still watching all of this just from my little corner of the world, and I don't see a whole lot of deglobalization happening. It's still very much a globalist market. Hey, maybe I could be wrong, but I haven't seen anything to suggest otherwise. The U.S. is still a net import economy. We still import basically everything. We don't make a whole lot of stuff. And who do I mean by we? Let me go ahead and define we. That would be young men, young American men that used to make stuff, that used to show up and they wore work boots, for example, and they ran a machine, or they did some kind of thing wherein they took raw materials and then made them into something. And then your older men, if they could, you know, they would eventually become the management people. And the reason you wanted those guys in management was because they weren't stupid and they knew what they were doing. They were competent. You wanted, because they, in other words, I wrote a whole article on this one time, but that was kind of the deal. You wanted those guys because they knew stuff. You were paying for their knowledge at that point. So yeah, they made more money than the younger guys, but it was because it wasn't because they just knew how to do every job in that shop, let's say, but it's because they knew how to do every job, but they also understood why they were doing it that way, which is really important. Anybody who's ever worked in any kind of job where you've had to rely on and ask a question of somebody and expect them to have an answer and not just make something up, which happens a lot. I mean, some of you out there, I mean, again, if you know what I'm talking about, you ask somebody a question and then someone is deer in the headlights, has no idea, because they just hired that person, put them in management and said, here you go. Because they have an MBA from some school, and it's like, that's not good enough, dude. You need to have real world experience, you know, and I do mean not the experience kind of thing that they ask for on like the LinkedIn fake jobs. I'm not talking about that. Like, oh, you need to have like 4 degrees and 600 years of experience to get this job as a caterer. What the hell, dude? No, that's fake. They just want your money. They just want you to fill out the form and pay a $15 background check fee. That's all they want, the $15. It's a scam. And by the way, that's a scam that I thought of in like 2011. You know, I mean, I remember telling friends about that, like, because I remember like, why are people paying $15? Like, dude, we could just make a fake. I'm not kidding. Like, I mean, there's actually a friend of mine that follows my work, and he's like, dude, I remember you talking about that. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that was just me like pitching. Like, why would people do this? This is the dumbest thing ever. You know, but when you think like a businessman and then you also understand how scams work, it's like, dude, this would be the best thing ever. Just get a bunch of people applying for these fake jobs that sound like real, and you could make money off that. Yep. Yep, and that's where all this stuff comes from. So it isn't my idea. It's just me telling to one guy, but I'm sure it filtered its way out through into the world, I'm guessing. But it isn't just me who thinks like that. There's lots of people who think like that. But I don't see anything deglobalizing happening. I don't know who Peter Siegelin is. So sorry. Ottoman Empire, Suez Canal, yes. We're 10 times more. Yeah, probably. Yeah. Hold on here. I got to scroll down here. Doggone it, lost me again. Gotcha. on the rare JEP, yeah, C-16 military. Yeah, exactly. It's just that's what it is. I don't, like I said, I don't usually bring it up. What's up, brother? Hi. Let's see here. You think they are going to do away with the current monetary system and change into something else? They don't really have to. The dollar's already all but digital. I mean, they really don't need to change anything, I don't think. And especially if people keep accepting it. It'd be like, think of it like this. Will Coca-Cola ever change its name to something else and say, here, we're just a new brand name now? No, Coca-Cola is one of the most valuable properties on the planet. Like, I mean, it's up there with like Disney and stuff. Like, these are insane. In fact, the Coca-Cola name recognition is like, more people have heard of Coca-Cola than Jesus Christ. You know, it's like, I don't remember where I heard that from, but somebody pointed that out. Like, that actually sounds believable, because it's like, yeah, because of the branding. So Coca-Cola is never going to change its name unless it absolutely had to. So U.S. dollar brand dollar bills, no, they'll probably never really change that if they don't absolutely have to do it, because then it brings everything into question, you know. But if people understand dollars, and more importantly, see, this is again the biggest challenge. Nobody who's here illegally, nobody who's here, you know, working on a visa, they're not going to watch anything that I produce. Never. And I don't mean that to sound like they should. No, that's not what I'm saying. This isn't an ego thing. This is me pointing out that they don't care. All they care about, and all most people care about, is somebody gives them a $100 bill. They know they can take that and spend it someplace. That's it. That's all they care about. And they know that if you give them a $100 bill American, that in their country it might have the spending power of like $5,000. You know what I mean? It's so no, I don't see any reason why they would change it. They could try and maybe change it around. They'll change some of the rules maybe, but I think it's just easier for them to just dry it up and then just direct it, because you can direct where you want the money to go. Just as we started this conversation, you know, whatever, hour and a half ago, with the trucking sector, when I was talking about that. In the trucking sector, you have guys that have borrowed all this money, that are here illegally, that are here on visas, that are non-domiciled CDLs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These guys that have borrowed this money. And now who lent all that money? Some form of bank, if you want to call it that. Somebody bankrolled all that. And they're never going to have to pay that back. That's a subsidy. And if you're competing against that, what chance do you have? And think of it like this. Again, just put yourself in a business position. Let's say, I don't care what business you pick. Pick a business. Any business at all. Anything that pops into your head. If all of your competitors are being given free everything, can you compete against them? No. And that's really all that matters, is that you're not able to compete with them. And then for your troubles, you get to hear the Republicans and the losertardians say, well, you just didn't want to compete. No, that's not what that is, Republicans. And that's not what it is, losertardians. It's that I know for a fact that my competitors are being subsidized, either with cheap labor from other countries or just straight up slavery. Or they're just being given a bunch of counterfeit money. So they don't really need to change it. They just, you know, all they have to do is just wait another 15 years, and none of this will really matter, seriously. because there's a demographic reality, there's a biological reality that exists with that, and this is the truth. Is, I mean, like, let's talk biological reality. Gen X women are off the table in America. They're completely off the table, biologically speaking. That's done. Many millennial women are basically off the table now, except for some of the maybe, which means they're not going to have any kids. So you're down to Gen Z chicks. How many of them are going to crank out 5 kids? Statistically speaking, it ain't going to happen. So, I mean, like, no. That's, remember, if you're a farmer and your cattle aren't going to reproduce, you're just going to replace them with new cattle, sacred cows at that. That's for the 1% who'll get that joke. You bring migrant, don't say me, I don't bring any migrant cattle from Mexico. But bring migrant cattle from Mexico, and this, yeah, but that's exactly what it is. You're right. That's exactly how it works. What do you think of Blackstone? If you're talking about the company that, like, buying all the real estate and everything, yeah, I mean, dude, it's terrible. It shouldn't be allowed, frankly. Or if you're going to allow it, you tax it differently. And I'm not a big fan of taxes, but in this particular situation, this is one of those things where you actually have to look at it and say, okay, no, personal income taxes shouldn't exist. Personal property taxes shouldn't exist either. However, corporate taxes can exist. And that's what really should be happening. Corporations should be paying more. I'm not going to say they're a fair share, because I would actually put a number on it. So I'm not like the weirdos out there who won't define its terms. But no, corporations should be paying for all of this stuff, because they're actually getting something for their money. They're getting the corporate veil. They're getting corporate protection. So they actually are getting something. A normal person isn't getting any of that. They are subject to liability. They're subject to all these things that are part of the reality of life as an American. So as a result, they should be paying for any of this stuff. Like, well, but the corporations just raise the prices. Yes, they will. They will raise the prices. And the way around that is that you start making stuff as a small business and compete against the corporations. They have to pay huge taxes. You don't. That's how that works. And that's why they flipped it. That's why it all got flipped around, and it got turned into the corporations don't pay any of the taxes, all the people, all the plebs pay all the taxes. That's why that got flipped. It's because, they don't want to compete with it. Because again, remember, large companies like Blackstone cannot compete, in a real market. Blackstone's they're just basically a hedge fund for real estate. If you didn't have all the rules and regulations, then you would have people just building more and more houses. You'd have builders building. In fact, there'd be a surplus of houses. That's what would end up happening. You'd have a bunch of people building stuff, and then then eventually they're on the ass end of the pyramid, and then there's just more houses than there are buyers. That's what ends up happening. So whoever gets into it last is the one who gets screwed. That's just how it is. That's just boom and bust. That's just your normal boom bust cycle. But as it pertains to the companies that actually make stuff, yeah, it'd be hard for them to compete with small businesses. It'd be tough. I'm not saying they couldn't do it, but it would be really tricky, because the bigger a company gets, the bigger the bureaucracy tends to get. And when that happens, it's more and more money out. And if your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall, and that's what ends up happening. But if you're going to get subsidized, and if you're just going to get a bunch of stock market go up, and you're going to get, you convince everybody convince the government to tell everybody to shove their money into the stock market. So the Ted Cruz is pushing that. Let's give the stock market a bunch of money, so that way when your baby is born, they get a bunch of money. It's like, in other words, you're literally saying you're just going to print money and shove it into the stock market to keep a handful of giant companies that should have gone out of business years ago. I mean, like, dude, it's no different than the Orange Messiah saying we're going to take a stake in these companies, dude. So you're now literally picking winners or losers at the governmental level. I don't understand. So we're not doing capitalism anymore? Say it with me. But it wasn't real capitalism, man. Yeah, I know. No. See. Hold on. Stop. Doggone it. This thing got to me. Again. Decentralized finance thought. I mean, if you're talking about, like, again, if you're talking about orange internet money or something like that, sure. Again, I love the idea. I've done several videos on that. I love the idea of decentralizing, of removing government from printing money. Yes, I love this idea. I haven't run into too many people who who want that. I think that it's as with a lot of people. They want the benefits of a free market. They want the benefits of people, the inventors going out there and doing that stuff, doing all the legwork. They want the benefits of all that. They don't want the liabilities that go with it, such as like having to pay for it. That's just reality. That's human nature. Like I said, I mean, I've said this a dozen times, but that's just human nature. Human nature is to try and get more out of something than is there. Right? This is what we try to do. This is why you have that bid-ask spread. Well, eventually this happens, and then a transaction occurs. That's all it is. So, but yeah, in principle, I love the idea of decentralized finance. I would love to see it happen. But keep in mind, there's so many people addicted to, you know what I mean? Like there's so many people that are addicted to that are addicted to the idea of, well, what if there's an emergency? We just need to print a little money for this. There will always be an emergency. That's just how it is. North Carolina is a good example of this. A big hurricane hits North Carolina from out of nowhere, a year and a half ago or so. And or a year ago. So the temptation would be, let's print a bunch of money. And like that shouldn't happen. What should happen would be that if you had any kind of competent leadership, they would say, hey, you know what, let's rally as Americans and go help our fellow Americans out. This is out of charity, meaning that like there's not going to be any money changing hands on this. Kind of like what the Amish have done. The Amish showed up there and built a bunch of houses. Probably built them better houses than they had before, just knowing the Amish. So yeah, I mean, it's like that's how you would do that. You can lead through, you can either lead through fear and intimidation, you can lead through inspiration, or you can lead through debt. It just depends on what you want to do. Debt or obligation. I would say that, again, inspiration is my, my preferred method, but I'm a weirdo when it comes to stuff like this. Let's see here. Doggone it. And did this to me again. UK, don't private banking up to the 16th century. Yeah, it sounds like somebody who got in there and said something about like give me control of a nation's issuance of currency, and I care not who makes its laws. Sounds about right, anyway. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at today. How long has it been? It's been almost 2 hours actually. So I'm gonna go get something to eat. In the meantime, guys, we'll probably see you next time and stuff, and maybe a little bit. But hold on here. I'm gonna take my little light down. So now it's gonna look all weird. So yeah, Rothschild.